Hey y'all let me know in the chat right now. Like I just joined my guest is gonna be joining me in just a few minutes. But y'all let me know right now. Can y'all hear me okay? Let me know if you can hear me okay or not. If not, then I'll swap out. I'm waiting for my guest to rejoin. He was having audio issues, so y'all let me know in just a second. If y'all can hear me okay, can y'all hear me? Let me know. What's up, Sugar Britches? Good to see you in the chat. Hey, Brown Door. Good to see y'all. Can y'all hear me? Hey, Fab Welder One. I'm glad to see you in the chat too. What's up, Al Santariga? All right, my sound is. Let me see. All right, Fab Welder, you can hear me good. Everybody else, y'all can hear me all right? Let me know. I'm getting ready to get Chris on here in a few minutes. Chris Kramer. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear me in the chat. All right. Brent Nunley. Brent Nunley said hear me good. Everybody else, sound check, sound check. Y'all let me know what's up. Got a good show in for y'all ready tonight. I'm so excited about this right now. We got like everybody who's in the chat right now. Bigfoot Lake, thank you for showing up tonight. Good to see you. Al Santariga, thank y'all for showing up. Y'all stick around. I call him the Smithsonian. I call him the Smithsonian because he got information. I'm waiting for him to join the chat. We're going to talk about the giants tonight. We're going to talk about the Nephilim. We're going to talk about all that good stuff. And I want to talk about how it relates to Bigfoot and Dogman in my mind. Like, and I might be completely wrong. Like I said, at the end of the day, y'all, when it boils down to it, no, but we're all just trying to figure this stuff out when it comes to Bigfoot and Dogman and giants and all that kind of stuff. The Nephilim, we're trying to figure it out. And I might be completely wrong, but some of this stuff is theory, but we're all trying to figure it out. There's no experts in this field when it comes to Bigfoot, Dogman, cryptids, paranormal, none of that stuff. We're just all trying to figure everything out. I don't know where Marquetta or Brandon or any of my moderators are. I guess I need to let them know real quick. Let me go share this in the chat real quick. And then I'm going to bring on my guest Chris Kramer in just a second. I'll bring on my guest Chris Kramer in just a second, y'all. Y'all just hang tight. We're getting ready to go live. We're going to talk about the giants. We're going to talk about the Nephilim. Any questions that y'all have tonight? Hold on. All right, so any questions that y'all have tonight, make sure y'all put y'all's questions in all caps because it's easier for me to recognize the questions and stuff like that. Where's Al Santariga? Al, I'm going to make you a mod right now because you've been with me for a long time. Al, you're a moderator right now. Sugar Bridges, you show up regularly. Anybody who show up in the chat with any negative or disrespectful comments and stuff like that, Sugar Bridges, I'm going to make you a mod real quick. Anybody y'all been any of y'all who out there right now like supporting the show, I appreciate y'all. I'm getting ready to bring Chris Kramer on right now. I'm waiting for the rest of my mods from the group and from the channel, whatever, to join. I'm not gonna wait for them. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. But tonight we're gonna be discussing Al, you got your wrench right now. Sugar Britches, you got a wrench. I hope you still out there in the chat. All of y'all who just joined, if you have not clicked on the like, y'all click the like. And if y'all are not subscribed to the channel and click on notifications and click all notifications so that you'll be notified every time I go live. I'm bringing Chris Kramer on. Chris, unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, Chris. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. All right, y'all. Good. So I call him the guru. So, Sugar Britches, I'm not sure if you've been a mod before. Al already knows how to mod. Sugar Britches, if you're out there right now, and as a moderator, if you see any comments that you're looking through the live chat, the way to deal with comments or whatever for anybody, you see any crazy comments and stuff, you just long press that person's name or comment. When you long press their name, it'll give you several different options. and when you see several different options, to give you the option to remove their comment, to block them from the channel. Block them from the channel, that usually goes along with removing anybody saying crazy stuff, being disrespectful, or any of that kind of stuff. Just let me know. John Orr, thank you for showing up. Paula Holland, thank you for showing up tonight. Mr. Mills, thank y'all for showing up. We're going to discuss the giants and Nephilim. Chairman Mousy Tongue, I've seen you here before. And Chairman Mousy Tongue said, "We love Chris. He's like all knowing, laugh out loud." Yes, he is. That's what I'm telling y'all. I used to joke on Chris all the time. Chris, I had to beg Chris to come on the show with me in the beginning, y'all. I'm telling y'all, I had to beg him. I had to pray over it. I had to fast on it and everything. I was like, Chris, can you please stop showing out? I told Chris he was the Smithsonian of the cryptid community, because like the Smithsonian be hiding stuff. They have all this information. They don't want to share it. That was Chris. But I had to bring Chris up to speed, but he didn't came along. I had to beg him. That song TLC, I ain't too proud to beg. I wasn't too proud to beg. I begged Chris. And I said, you know what, Chris, you prayed over it, but prayed on it too. And God said for you to come on board. I told Chris, come on board. Now, we're going to talk about this. Now, I want to say this real quick. If y'all are not familiar with Chris Kramer, Chris was on, he was on a couple of episodes of my show with me. Chris was on, let me go to it real quick and then I'm going to come back. But Chris was my guest, and Chris is also co-hosted with me on some of my shows. Chris was on episode 24 and 25. Episode 24 are the Nephilim still among us today. And on episode 25, the Nephilim still exists, part 2. So after that, I did episode 26, and that wasn't Chris, that was with Barton Nonnelly. But Chris and I were supposed to do part 3, and we finally got back to it tonight. And originally, when we did these shows together before, a lot of the time, like, people had some issues. And, I'm a Christian. Chris is a Christian also. So we were bringing a lot of sources or whatever out of the Bible for explaining Bigfoot and Dogman, and our reasoning somewhat behind believing why Bigfoot and Dog and other cryptids are Nephilim type creatures. But outside of all that, I believe, and I think Chris is on the same page with me on this, like, I don't need the Bible to explain why I believe they are Nephilim or demigods or whatever you want to call them, or when it comes down to it, I do know that they are flesh and blood in some nature. They are flesh and blood, but I also believe they are also spiritual or supernatural creatures at the same time, based on the fact that they are able to, let me say this real quick, because it's kind of difficult when you get into it. The flesh and blood aspect, I'll begin that just by saying that these creatures, Bigfoot and Dogman, they are able to do, they do eat, they do procreate, they do have offspring, they have babies, they do eat, they do die, they can be killed, they do have nests, they do everything that like a regular animal would do, but also at the same time, that's just the flesh and blood side. The paranormal or spiritual, supernatural side of it, they're able to do other things that natural animals cannot and do not do. Cloaking, and I don't mean camouflaging. That's a whole different thing. Now, yes, they can do camouflage as well. They do blend in very well to their surroundings. They can blend in and look just like a tree. They can blend in and look just like bushes or greenery or anything that's around them. They can do that. So they can camouflage. But there's other things that they do outside of that is not within the norm, which is cloaking. I've seen several different forms of cloaking myself personally. One form of cloaking is what I like to call the predator effect. I call it the predator effect. Some people call it the glimmer, or just different things. If any of you who've seen the movie The Predator before, on the movie The Predator, you know what that looked like. It looked like a mirage, or like, I can't remember that. There was another movie that came out a few years ago, and it was called, I can't remember, it was like the Avengers or something. It was like that. There was one character on there that was called the Silver Surfer or something like that. But it has that mirage or predator type look. or you can see it, you can see its outline, and you can still see through it. You can see all that. That is what I call the predator effect. That is one way that they. Another way that I've seen them cloak is where I've seen them go from being completely visible to going invisible out of nowhere, or manifesting before your very eyes where there's nothing there, and then immediately coming onto, like, manifesting before your eyes, like into existence. I've seen that too. I've also seen dog man. Bigfoot, as far as Bigfoot concerned, I've seen some things on video and on pictures that I can say, well, it might be, it's some type of humanoid, and sometimes it looks like maybe, I guess, what we call a Bigfoot. But I can't say I've had a Bigfoot encounter. I've definitely had a dog man encounter, and I've actually seen dog man or had sightings more than once, at least more than 10 times, from 2013 up to 2022. So I know where to go right now if I want to see dog man. Whatever reason, the property that my parents used to live on, for whatever reason, they always show themselves to me. I don't know why that is, but I put them onto them, and there's been times when I didn't see them first before I started recording. Sometimes I see them with my natural eyes, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't see them until after I take a picture or record video and then go back and look at it after the fact. But all I'm saying to y'all is that you are able to see them in both ways. My reason, and I'm going to go to Chris in just a second, and then he can kind of give you an introduction to himself for those of you who are not familiar with Chris, who he is, what he does, and what his interest is in cryptids, dog man, Bigfoot, and all things paranormal as it relates to this subject. What we're doing, nobody's an expert in this field, and I like to joke around with Chris, and we talk about this kind of stuff, but we're not experts. We're just experiencers, eyewitnesses, researchers, whatever you want to call it. But we, at the end of the day, when you are a fan, subscriber, member, or whatever you are, whatever your interest is in cryptids, dogman, Bigfoot, at the end of the day, it should go beyond that point from entertainment purposes to information purposes and learning. So that's what I'm here for, and that's what Chris is here for. And those of us, when it gets to a certain point in this field, you get to a point where it's not entertainment now. Out of all the people who I've interviewed on the show, or people who I've talked to, other podcasters, eyewitnesses, other researchers, what your job is as a member, subscriber, fan, or whatever, or Bigfoot, dogman enthusiast, or whatever you're into, what it should be after a while is taking all the encounters and shows that you've watched and listened to, taking that information that you've heard from each of those shows, and taking that from entertainment purposes, and taking those information that you get from those shows, and taking it and putting it together, and the common denominators in those shows and in that information that you get, gathering that all together, and then coming up with a basically a list of things that goes along with Bigfoot or Dogman, like a list of things, like what we know as far as Dogman is concerned. Most people say, most encounters, they're talking about the black German Shepherd type, pointed ears, tufts on the ears, amber eyes. Some people talk about the fact that they felt like an evil, it was resonating evil, or some people talk about mind speak when it comes to these things. It had like the upper body of like a bodybuilder, tapered waist, hawk style legs, able to go from 2 feet to 4 feet, anywhere between 6.5 to 8, 9, 10 feet tall. Different things that you hear about them, and that's not always the case. There's different things, there's different sightings, there's different encounters. Just because one person has seen that certain type, which I like to call the German Shepherd or Nubis type, there's also different ones too. There's a list, and we're going to get all into all of that in a few minutes, and I'm going to break it down because I don't want to get too long-winded on it. But when it comes to these things, the reason I personally believe, as far, tonight we're going to talk about the giants, but I'm just bringing up some things real quick with Dogman and Bigfoot. But we're going to get into the giants and the Nephilim, because I think some of this stuff is almost intertwined, even with the paranormal, and we're going to get into that tonight. what I wanted to say real quick, as far as the Nephilim theory, the reason that the Nephilim theory for me personally fits the best is because number one, the flesh and blood and the spiritual, paranormal slash supernatural side all together intertwined. Some people's questions is there's people who believe that they're straight up Bigfoot and Dogman, straight up flesh and blood. You got people who believe that they're spiritual, and then there's people who believe that they're both. That would be Nephilim. Okay, so the flesh and blood only type for me does not fit because the things that they can do that does not fit with just straight up flesh and blood. Yeah, we know all the things that they can do as far as flesh and blood is concerned, but as far as the supernatural aspect of it, if you're only flesh and blood, then explain how they're able to disappear before your eyes, explain how they're able to mind speak, explain how they're able to have footprints that you see when you're tracking footprints and evidence, how they're able to go from walking in the middle of a field or the middle of the snow or anything like that, and you see footprints, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, those footprints completely disappear to where there's no tree for it to jump up into. There's no reason for it to have disappeared. So at that point, you got to question: did it jump into it? Did it like disappear? Did it like levitate and like end up somewhere else? Did it disappear and go off back into another dimension? That is not something that a natural animal would do. That's not natural when you see them disappear before your very eyes. So when it goes into that, that's when you have to question. That's why I say supernatural or Nephilim. One other thing, and I'm gonna bring this up, and then I'm gonna let Chris jump right in there. But one other thing too, some people have said, well, how can you say that they are supernatural or Nephilim or part fallen angel and part flesh and blood? Because angels don't do this or angels don't do that. Well, there's in the scripture in Job, and I can't remember if it's in Job or not, but I'll look that up while Chris is talking.
Ow.
But I do know this for a fact, and I'll look that up. But I do know that in one of these books where it was talking about the fact that when Job and his family, I think this was the story about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I don't think it was Job. It wasn't Job, it was Lot. And when the angels that came to appear before Lot and his family, Lot came and Sodom and Gomorrah was getting ready to get destroyed. And when Sodom and Gomorrah was getting ready to get destroyed, Lot had invited these angels into his house. And I don't know if at that point in time he knew that they were angels or not, but he invited them to come in his house. He actually prepared a meal, and those angels actually sat and ate a physical meal with Job and his family. Now, also at the same time, the other people who came to Lot's house, they came in and they were seeking to have sex with those angels, those men that they saw. They came in a physical form. Saw these supernatural beings, angels, come into Lot's house and they wanted to have sex with him. Now, the point I'm trying to make is this: they saw them in a physical form. Those angels, which are supernatural beings, were able to come in, sit down, and have a physical meal with Job and his family. And at the same time, they were also able to, when those men were, I don't know if they were able to get into Lot's house or not, but in that story, at the end of the day, they were able to completely blind those men who came in trying to, I guess, seduce them. They were able to blind them, and not only that, they were able to completely wipe out that whole village after the fact. That is supernatural in and of itself, and the fact that they were able to kill like thousands of people, and it was only two angels. So I'm just saying all that just to say that there were times in the Bible where angels did come in, they did eat, and then if you look at Genesis 6, um, I think Genesis 6 verses 1 through 4, when those angels came in and they came in and they took wives up in and of themselves and they had children. So these fallen angels came in and they had children with human women. So they were able to procreate with or reproduce with human women. So if you look at that and you take that from today, fallen angels coming in having sex with humans, the creation of that was the Nephilim slash giants. Genesis 6 doesn't go deep in depth into it, but the book of Enoch does. And there's several other books that were taken out of the Bible as well that also go deep into that. But Chris, before I go too far, did you have anything that you wanted to expound on that before I go too far into it?
Well, I don't know. I think you pretty much covered the whole show.
I had to bring that up because some people
Thanks
don't
for
know.
coming.
Like,
Good night.
some, but Chris, I had to bring that up. I'm going to the comments. I had to bring that up because some people, like, whether they're Christian or non-Christian, people don't have any idea. Don't know what Nephilim are, how the whole thing started, what Nephilim are, any of that kind of stuff. So I needed to bring them up to speed to what's going on as far as that's concerned, and why I believe the whole Nephilim theory and what a
I'm just
Nephilim
teasing
is.
you, B. You know that. I was
No, I
just
know,
teasing you.
like some.
You opened the door to a lot of different kind of facets of this, didn't you? I mean, I'm trying to think where to go with this right now. I guess for those who don't know me, I am friends with Bettina. We met kind of by accident about a year ago, and as a result, a real short synopsis. I had an initial encounter over 30 years ago in Wisconsin, and I'm pretty sure that I started jumping down this rabbit hole right after that happened. I hate to use the term researcher, but I think we all start out that way when you have that initial paradigm shift, where your reality gets flipped, and some people go in the direction like they want to pretend it didn't happen up about it, and other people maybe go in the direction that I did, which is trying to understand and try and learn. I think the thing that I'm taking away from your intro, Bettina, is that I was musing over the idea that, it's amazing, and I'm still so guilty of this, of always trying to squeeze these interactions, these encounters, and these experiences into something that fits into my human logic, and that includes, a biblical narrative, a Zechariah Sitchin Anunnaki narrative, and every, and an interdimensional narrative, or the alien narrative, whatever it is, always trying to fit this thing into a box that makes sense to me, and lately I've been trying to stay out of that mentality, because I think it closes minds, it closes my mind to the fact that, what I may consider logical and what I may consider human logic, or an accepted version of human logic, and the reality of what this phenomena entails and what these beings are and what their purpose is, whatever that is, may be so completely different that, it might blow my own mind. I don't know. I mean, as we've talked before, I didn't start out this thing as a biblical creationist. I didn't start out this thing as a practicing Christian. And I certainly, was willing to kind of, I think the thing that started to make the most sense to me early on were when I had to work as Sitchin and started looking at Graham Hancock, some of the other guys that weren't necessarily looking at this thing from like a biblical narrative and from a biblical text narrative, and they were hitting on certain points that just made sense. I mean, we've talked in the past how a lot of these, especially Old Testament stories, and I will preface this by saying I'm not saying that anything that comes out of my mouth is what I believe. It's led me in a lot of different directions, and so I definitely have leaned more towards biblical creationism in the last 5 or 6 years, just because it matches it checks off a lot of boxes. The Nephilim theory, the Genesis text, older text taken from Sumerian sources, the Sumerian tablets in particular, back up the Genesis story thousands of years before the Genesis story. So, when I look at a historical, non-traditional narrative that a lot of the people that I have a lot of respect for, people in the past that have done this type of work, especially archaeologists' works, the biblical scholars, that has to be taken, and some weight has to be given to it. To me, I don't trust anymore any accepted academic narrative about our history, about archaeology, about anthropology. I don't believe it anymore. I've seen too many different things, and so here we are, talking about once again, because it's a riveting topic. Just what are these things? What are these what are these people that I've had interaction with consistently now for a couple of good 3 years? We're like, things have changed a lot, in my interaction. What are they? I know what they say they are. And what I've been told by them and other guys that I go out with that have experienced a lot of these fantastical things, it doesn't always match up with other people's. Some of these experiences don't match up at all, and that is fine. That is an okay thing. We don't, like you said earlier, but we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to. Nobody has to. Anybody that's shouting from the rooftops that they know and they're right, and then disdains other people's experiences, they're dead in the water, man. I believe that. They'll never. If I was like that, I would never learn a thing. So.
Absolutely.
We can open the door up and look at these things if you want. We can delve into the. You've done a lot of research, especially from a canonical and non-canonical text standpoint, the same as I have. I've done a lot of historical research, and I pay attention. The only way sometimes we can learn is by I don't have the ability to jump in a plane and go to friggin' Iraq and or wherever some of these, or Jerusalem. So I have to at some point go outside my sphere of life and take the word and look at the people who my gut tells me are on the right path and have an honest cast about them, and so I still do that, not as much. I rely a lot on my own experiences. I rely on a lot of the things, that have affected me and that I've seen myself, but that doesn't mean that I am closed-minded to anybody's ideas, options, or opinions,
Hold on real quick.
Even some of the apers can, maybe that's all they've seen,
Christine Murphy said my audio is awful. Everybody else, let me know if my audio is terrible or not. Let me know and I'll change out my earbuds. Let me know. Chris, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, but I there were a few times where you were getting a little echoey and scattered, but right now it seems to be locking in a little bit better. I don't know. Find out from the gang what they
Y'all
say.
let me know real quick if the audio is bad. Let me know. Dark Wood said the audio was good. Everybody else, let me know if the audio was good.
I'll give you a prime example. I'll give you a prime example of kind of what we're just talking about. So this Friday, me and 4 other guys from our I hate that term, group, my group, got invited to show up and to go see Dr. Matt Johnson, who is for those of you who don't know, and a lot of people do know that are in the kind of investigating or even somewhat interested in this topic. He's kind of a bigger name, like publicly, than I'd ever want to be, and he's got a lot of followers. He's got a lot of people that that really buy into what he's got going on, and that's cool too. But a lot of his experiences, and he's one of these guys that he knows and he says, and this is what it is. And if you don't believe me, then you haven't had that. You're new into this or whatever. None of that's true. I really believe that some of the most people that are furthest down the road are the ones we will never, ever, ever hear about. That it becomes such a spiritual journey and very personal. And that is that's kind of my path. I'm kind of trying to veer towards that always. Spiritual growth kind of goes hand in hand with this for me personally. So anyway, we're going to go see him, and and maybe have a conversation with them publicly. I'm not real big on it, but I can't not go because, you know, we asked our whole kind of team to go. And what we've been told,
Real
but
quick,
you know, a lot of the
y'all,
things that he says are
building up to get into this. Real quick, y'all, we're building up to this, and just understand, like, really getting ready to get into the meat and potatoes. So for y'all that's like sitting around listening right now, don't y'all disappear, because we're getting ready to go deep into this, and I'll give an introduction, like his belief, because I kind of get long-winded at times, but I needed to kind of build stuff up so y'all understand where we're coming from on this whole thing as far as cryptids, Nephilim, all that kind of stuff. It's all intertwined, so that's why I built up so long to it, because if you haven't caught part 1 and 2 of the shows that we did together on the Nephilim before, this is where we're coming from. And so Chris and I are going to be bringing this up. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. And like when I first got Chris on here, one of the things that was understood is that it's not something that you can just talk about in part, where it's just this little short dialogue about it. It's one of those things to where when you get into it, it's very intricate. It's very detailed. It's like several different facets of it, whether it comes to the giants. What do you think about that, Chris? Do you agree?
I think that once you start to, I'll talk about myself, man. That's all I can. When I start saying you, that sounds preachy as hell, and that is not who I am. When I started really digging into some of this stuff, and this was, you know, I mean, I started this before the internet was huge, and there wasn't a lot of, you know, we didn't have podcasts and YouTube channels and Facebook and none of that stuff going on, you know, and so that was, you know, and I still kind of retain that, although this has given me obviously an avenue for instant, you know, discovery and for research, particularly. But I think, what do I think? I think that with these topics, when I started to look into these things, it started to ask so many other questions that went beyond maybe necessarily the cryptid phenomenon. You know, I feel like that's just one part of a huge umbrella of topics that are all intertwined, and maybe aren't intertwined and just look like they are, you know. But again, it made me start asking questions, historical questions, you know, archaeological questions, academic narratives that don't add up. And I find that stuff almost as fascinating as maybe having the physical boots on the ground interaction that I've had, because it, you know, I always ask why has this been hidden from us? Why has this been obfuscated from us? Why? What is the purpose behind it? And it's always easy to go and look for answers, you know, like, you know, what's the go-to book, man? You know, for me anymore, I mean, really, it's the Bible.
Yes.
Take out religious context of it and just look at it as a historical ancient text. And, you know, and I can still find answers there. I can still find possibilities there. Do I think all of it is stems from a biblical narrative? I'm not sure. You know, I really don't know. I don't know what these things in the sky that, you know, the Air Force is taking pictures of and the Congress is having. I don't know. I can guess. You know, I know a lot of people believe that the ancient astronaut / ET narrative is really obfuscating the truth about it being a biblical narrative, that these ETs are actually possibly, you know, fallen. And I don't know that. You know, some of that kind of makes sense. I could fit that into a box if I wanted to, you know. I think the jury's still out, Bettina.
I agree with you. Well, so I wanted to bring up real quick, Chris, because I know that like tonight we're going to be discussing giants, and we're going to bring this all. This is not going to just be one show, because like when you delve into this in like its entirety, it's probably several different shows, and it's not all something that you can bring up in one show. So y'all just understand that right now, I guess we're going to talk about the Nephilim tonight, and maybe later on, because I don't want to kind of just go back and forth between Bigfoot and Dog Man. But right now, we're going to talk about the giants. And I'm gonna preface it just by going into this. Um, Genesis 6 talks about the fact there was giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in and took wives of all of which they chose. So when you go into that, when it said there were giants in the earth and in the earth, I can't talk right now. I'm sorry, y'all. Forgive me. When it goes into that, you have I'm
You're doing
slurring
great.
speech. When it goes into that, it says, and it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, and in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the watchers, the son of the heavens, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. The term watchers is even seen in our Bible. And then this is different Bible versions to call it different things. You'll see there were giants on the earth in those days, the Nephilim in those days in some versions, and in some versions you'll see the watchers running the earth. But it says, then also after that, when the sons of God came in and took wives of all of which they chose, which means that they were coming in and they were procreating with human women. Now, the flood story basically goes into the fact that not only was the earth wiped out because of the giants coming into fruition, but also because of the human fallen angel union, they came giants of that. Now, I wondered at one point in time, why were the animals also destroyed? Because what did the animals do? How did they sin? Why were they destroyed? Now, it didn't go deep into that, but into it in the book of Jasher and some of the other books, it does go into explaining that those fallen angels were also defiling animals also. So if you take that and you take a fallen angel coming in, if the fallen angel and human union is a giant human or giant or titans in some versions, like you got the Greek versions talking about the giants or the gods, Hercules, Zeus, and all them. These things that we think is like mythological, that's not mythological. They were telling you about these different gods that actually existed during their time because it actually existed. Most cultures throughout the world have stories of giants or men of renown is even talked about in the Bible. So when you take that and then you put that with an animal, where do you think that minotaurs came from? Satyrs. You got some other abomination of some type of giant or type of animal, fallen angel hybrid. That's just my theory. I could be completely wrong on it, but if you look at Enoch and the book of Jasher and the book of Giants, it goes into talking about monsters that were created from these unions. Are you familiar with that, Chris?
I am. So we can look back at every major, mythological pantheon and story and see commonalities, right? I mean, obviously, Egyptian, segues into Greek, segues into Roman, Celtic mythology. They're all talking about a lot of these. I mean, let's face it, there are literally, from my own experience and from countless other people's that I've heard as well, there are a host of different types of entities out there. I mean, from the rock giant types to the Nephilim, red-haired, six-fingered giant types to dogmen to goat-headed people, lion-headed people. I mean, like there's a background story to all these things that at this point I'm not so sure that they're all springing from the same well. I don't know. I do know. I think I believe that there was a time where I fully believed that the giants, especially the red-haired, six-fingered, you know, ones that were finding, skeletal remains all over the, North America and Central America and parts of South America. I mean, I believe that follows the, lack of a better term, traditional Nephilim storyline of being on the earth before the flood and after. And then we've gone into a deep dive into the history of how that they escaped the flood and how they, from Sardinia across the Atlantic to South America to Mexico. I mean, and into North America. I mean, we've taken a pretty deep dive on that. We'll just kind of subface that by saying
Absolutely.
there is so much overwhelming evidence of this that it's not deniable anymore. I mean, from the Hopewell mounds to archaeological digs in Mexico to other things, it just supports that they were here, and maybe they still are. I don't know. I do know that. But then when we talk about like the dog-headed creatures, the dogmen, when we talk about some of like I've had that experience with these kind of rock beings, especially in the Southwest. I don't know that they're all stemming from the same source. There's a lot of theory out there. I no longer believe that the Sasquatch people are Nephilim descended, or at least not the ones that I've had interaction with. I don't think that's true anymore. I used to. I think our guys are cultivating a theory that that they may be the new Watchers, or something like that. Because in my interactions, there has been a benign, spiritual, Christian quality to those interactions that it supports that for me personally. I don't think everybody has that. And that's what I'm saying. Let's say the host of entities. I think that there's enough, possibilities that you hear of these things being abducted and continuous genetic experiments going on. Who's doing that? I don't know. Why are they doing it? I don't know. But are some of these other entities a product of that? That's possible. Anything's possible. That makes sense to me. But I don't know that it to be true. I do know that, like I said, the clans that we have, developed a rapport with, are without, in my mind, a doubt, good by nature, by spiritual nature. And I'm not so sure that their job isn't to, maybe not in a physical way, to protect us, give us some type of spiritual protection. I kind of believe that because they seem to have those type of abilities that defy what we do and what we're capable of. Maybe we had it a long time ago and lost it. Maybe we've never had it. Maybe it needs to be cultivated. I'm not sure. But anyway, there's my answer.
Well, speaking on the giants, Genesis 6 goes into it. And then not only Genesis 6, and we can go, for those of you who are not Christian, or we don't need just only the Bible. We got several other sources that we're going to bring up here in just a second. Because, I don't want it to be one-sided for those of you who don't accept that. We don't need that. We don't need we're Christian, but I'm open just on my channel. Whenever it comes down to it, I'm open to, because we're all trying to learn. I'm open to those of you who believe whatever you believe as far as cryptid is concerned. Your theory is your theory, and I'm willing to have anybody to come on as a guest and discuss anything paranormal, cryptid related, whatever your beliefs are. Those are your beliefs, and everybody's voice. So that's where I'm coming from on this. But I will bring non-biblical aspects to the show, just to show and just to let you see that there's not just a biblical source that we need as far as it's concerned when it comes to giants or cryptids even, to explain these things, because culturally, Native American cultures have talked about red-haired giants. They've talked about several giants, not just here in the Americas, but also in the Middle East and different islands and oceans. And I'm going to let Chris go into that in a few minutes because he's got a lot of information on that. But I also want to say that as far back as the 1800s, all across the United States and several other places, just here in the United States alone, hundreds or thousands of different giant skeletons were found here in archaeological digs. And once those archaeological digs were, brought up, those skeletons were brought up. Once it was brought up, those remains were then sent off to the Smithsonian. You never heard anything about it again, never seen it again. And think that there's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy to Bigfoot, Dogman, and everything that they don't want you to know. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, things get skirted away. You never hear about it again. So I will say, what was that island? There's a major island. I can't think of it right now, but they have it on their island. I can't remember the name. I don't know if it's not the Canary Islands. I can't
Sardinia.
remember. Sardinia.
It's Sardinia.
Can you talk about that?
South of Sicily, the Mediterranean.
Okay. Can you talk about that, Chris? What do you know about like giant archaeological things?
So I would love to say that I've been to Sardinia, but I haven't. So this is one of those things where, like, if I want to see it and I want to learn about it, I gotta trust somebody that is in it for the right reasons and is, you know, legitimate. And to me, I don't think at this point in 2023 you can have a serious conversation about the history of the Nephilim and their travels as they escaped the flood and afterwards without bringing up L.A. Marzulli. You just can't. You know, I mean, L.A. has devoted a good part of the second half of his life into understanding the Nephilim in particular. I mean, the Watcher series is fantastic. On the Trail of Nephilim, they're a fantastic series. And, you know, LA's done some work and some research in Sardinia, you know, and so, you know, I don't like parroting other people, but I think in this case, you know, especially when it comes to archaeological history and researching the people in the area, it has validity. You know, LA, I just was paying attention to something he was doing, and it was a trip to Sardinia, and they were talking about the tombs that are on the island of Sardinia, and once again, the structures of these things are massive. Like, you know, like how they're actually constructed without something that's, you know, 13 feet tall and you know, able to lift 1,000 pounds is beyond me. And I, you know, especially for those people at those times. And LA believes that Sardinia was a Nephilim stronghold after they were chased out of the Promised Land, after they were chased out of Canaan. And as he tries to chart perhaps their journey, you know, that was one of the spots that he believes, and there's enough physical evidence to back it up, that these things inhabited and made Sardinia kind of like a fortress for them for a period of time. The people speak of, and I wish I spoke Italian or Sicilian, but the people that lived there for hundreds and hundreds of years all speak of these tombs in Italian. They're known as the tombs of the giants. You know, I mean, how much simpler could it be? Did somebody just make that up? No. I mean, that's, you know, if that's passed down for that long, there has to be a root to it. Somebody saw something. So, you know, I'm sure one of the more interesting things about Sardinia is that, well, how would they get there, right? So you could say that 12,000 years ago or 11,000 years ago, Sardinia was not an isolated island. It was connected to Sicily, you know, which gives you a land route because Sicily was connected to the bottom of Italy. So there's a physical path that makes it possible for them to have inhabited that, you know. The folklore behind these beings in Sardinia, they were worshipped. They were worshipped by the people, you know, like you see. Maybe. Well, I mean, at this point, are we making a distinction between the Nephilim and the word giant? I don't think so. They're kind of synonymous right now, especially with what we're talking about. You know, so Sardinia gets abandoned again, and then we have to look at, well, then how did they get to North America and South America and Mexico? However, I was watching, is it Tim Alberino? I've never can say his last name right.
Steve Quayle covered it.
Right. Alberino has a great theory on this. Before the Romans were who they were, there were the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were a sailing culture, a sailing race of great mariners. And he draws the inference that the Phoenician people may have been Nephilim descended themselves. However, why I'm saying this is because as we've seen with some of Steve Quayle's archaeological finds, there is evidence of the Phoenicians being in Mexico. There's evidence of the Phoenicians being in North America. The idea that's been shoved down our throats that that man was not capable of traversing the Atlantic Ocean in those times, that is a myth. That is not true. Obviously, we've seen the Vikings did it in very rudimentary craft, and there's enough evidence to support that the Phoenicians also not only traversed the Atlantic, but the Pacific and different stops in between, So that to me would indicate a path, a journey, a way to get from point A to point B for these giant beings. They set up shop in Mexico. They set up shop in south of Mexico, in Guatemala. Some of the greatest ruins in the world are in Guatemala. I think they encompass multiple Southern American cultures: the Mayans, the Incans, the Olmecs, the Aztecs. You look at when we look at what they were worshiping, and we look at the size of the structures that are so similar in appearance to structures found worldwide. What is that, a coincidence? I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Same with Machu Picchu in Peru. Like these things, it boggles the mind how men and women of our stature, especially with what we've been taught, were the tools that they could use to create these type of architectures. That's not believable to me anymore. It just isn't. I think that the question that I still have,
what you said.
I think the question that I still have is, so we have, which diverts a little from this, is we have these encounters and these interactions with these beings that have that defy physics and a lot of what they seem to be able to perform and do. Yet everything that we're talking about right now, especially in regards to the Phoenicians and traversing land masses and sailing across oceans, that's all physical, man. That's every bit of it physical. I don't see any abnormal or supernatural quality to that. So then it makes me want to make the distinction between the red-haired giants / Nephilim beings and maybe the Sasquatch and other cryptid beings that seem to have these cloaking / physics-defying abilities, and wonder why that is. Why is it that we're talking about physical structures and physical exploits, and yet what many of us have encountered is oftentimes not physical. Maybe it's quite the opposite. It's a great question. It's one that I haven't been able to solidify for myself. Like, what was the distinction, and why couldn't they just take a portal from Sardinia to Nakheipman or somewhere in the Inca country? Like, why did it have to be done that way? You know what I mean? Like, why is that? I don't know. It's a great question. Something that I've been asking myself for a while. So that's enough out of me.
Okay. Let me see. Eric, also known as Purple Hobbit Abroad, said Bible is vague on giants. But Eric, the fact that the Bible is vague on giants, it wasn't always vague on giants. There's several books that have been taken out of the Bible. The Book of Giants, for one, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Enoch goes in great detail about these giants. And I can't remember right now if it's out of the Book of Numbers.
The Book of Jubilees.
The Book of Jubilees. I can't remember if it was the Book of the Book of Giants, or was it the Book of Jasher? One of those books goes in great detail, and it was talking about monsters, and it goes in great detail explaining the different hybrid animal fallen angel unions, and it went in detail describing different ones. And I think it was like in the Book of Jubilees or Jasher, one of those two books, where there was a guy, and I still had a hard time. I looked it up before and I found it, and then I lost it again. It's so hard sometimes when you find stuff. I should have wrote it down at the time, but there was a case where a man went into, and I'm gonna have to look this up, and I'm bad about this, but he went into the mountainside looking for his lost sheep. He couldn't find it. And then when he finally did go into the mountainside looking, there was a stone rolled in front of this cave. He rolled that stone back. When he rolled the stone back, there was, it goes into detail saying there was a terrible beast inside of that cave that was feeding on that sheep. And it went into great explanation about it. And I'm gonna have to pull it back up, and I'm gonna have to see if I can find it again. But sometimes, like I guess maybe when I'm researching stuff and pulling different things up, I need to start pulling them up and writing them down at the time. But there's different things on it. Vincent brought up the Book of Giants. We need to bring up some of these. Would you call that an apocryphal or non-canonical book, Chris? These books that are been taken out of the Bible.
Well, who made that decision that they're non-canonical? I mean, if there's parts of Enoch that are quoted in the Bible, so that one was subjective at best. I mean, one has to think. So Enoch 1 really breaks it down, and it connects the story back to Genesis in a really concrete way. I'm not going to go into the detail because I don't have Enoch in front of me, but the bottom line is it kind of fleshes out what the fall and the aftermath of the fall and the creation and the birth of the Nephilim, where it stems from, in much greater detail, and the Book of Enoch is not completely non-canonical, because there are Christian denominations, really old ones. I believe the Ethiopian Orthodox Church recognizes the Book of Enoch as a part of their Bible. So again, we're talking about mankind determining these things instead of leaving them as they were initially intended. And that means there's agenda behind it, whatever that is, whether it's an evil agenda, an ignorant agenda. But there is an agenda. There's a human injecting narrative into that to kind of maybe obfuscate some of the truth of Genesis and some of the other tales straight up to the New Testament, intentionally remove it. And I don't think that's beyond the realm of probability at this point. Absolutely not. Whether it's the Council of Nicene or whatever, whoever made these determinations were very intent on not having us take a real good look at what Genesis really means and what it would be. Like as LA says, Genesis 6 sets up the entire narrative for the Bible, and if you go into the Bible with that in mind and start looking for continuity straight through to the New Testament, you can find it. It's there. So that to me is fascinating for sure.
I agree with you. Now, just out of the biblical aspect, and then we're gonna go into giants in America, and we're gonna also talk about the giant of Kandahar. So, because I told y'all we're gonna talk about some stuff outside of the Bible, but just bringing it into fruition, like the giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Now, when you talk about giants, we're not talking about the giants that were like we got basketball players today. The average man is today maybe 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", or something like that, and you have some that are basketball players that I don't know was y'all. I mean, the tallest man in our time that ever lived, I think he was like 8'11", and I think his name, I can't remember his name now, was like Robert something. He was like 8'11". Do you know who I'm talking about, Chris?
I remember the guy from the Guinness Book of World Records. He was pretty big. And I mean, you see, guys like Sean Bradley that played for BYU in the Sixers. He was 7'6". But I don't know that that's all related. There's giantism, which is what we've been told, a genetic condition. I think there's people that are just freakishly large. I think that. So here's a little American folklore that goes probably back to Western Europe.
Let me just tell them this fact real quick, Chris. The tallest man, and I'm going to let you go into it. The tallest man that lived during our time was 8'11", and his name was Robert Wadlow, Wadlow. He was 8'11", and that's what Chris was talking about when he brought up, I guess it's like a thyroid disorder or whatever, gigantism. But That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the giants, 6 fingers, 6 toes, giants of the Bible. But go ahead, Chris. Go right into what you were saying.
No, I think you can see the vestiges of some of this in our own folklore and maybe in Western Europe's folklore, So why is it that back in, say, the 1600s and before, people with red hair were looked at as supernatural and possibly a witch? Why is that? I don't know, but I think the red hair commonality is a little interesting, especially when we're talking about the traditional look of what the Nephilim / giants were with the red hair and the 6 digits. I love the it was pointed out to me a while ago that what's the first thing that two stranger Native Americans would do upon greeting each other? Is they would raise their hand. Now, are they waving hello? I don't believe that. I believe they're raising their hand to show that they had 5 fingers on their, or 4 fingers and a thumb on their hand, and not an extra finger. As in, I'm not an enemy. I'm human. That's I don't know that that's true, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Because as you brought up earlier, the native traditions in interaction with this giant race of people that inhabited North America there's a lot of it. It's vast, and it's left behind in so many ways in their oral traditions. In some of the, you talk about the Lovelock Cave. That's the most famous one in North America, I think. But again, it's left behind in their petroglyphs. I spent a lot of time out in the field petroglyphing. I'm addicted to that. I love it because I don't think there's no books written by these people. This is how they were able to pass on their stories and their traditions, and there's a language to it. I learned that. I've met people that actually had a codex to the Utes, and it was pretty cool. But I don't know when it comes to. Somebody said the giants are here and they're still around. That may be true. I've never seen one. I don't believe. I've seen a lot of other mind-boggling things. I know the story of the Kandahar giant. We can get into that if you like. The last time I talked about it, I missed a few key elements of it because I didn't have the timeline and somebody roasted me for it. So I did my homework again.
They had so many questions last time it became a Q&A.
Yeah, it did. And in that format, there's value too. I walk away from a lot of these shows, especially when I look at some of the comments up here, asking myself more questions, like it's like a learning curve and a learning process for me. Why are we here? Like, why, I know why I'm here. I think I know why you're here. I'm here to learn. That's the bottom line.
I got something for you after this. And after I say this to you real quick, I'm going to bring this up real quick. And I'm going to go scriptural, y'all, real quick. And then I'm going to go outside of the scripture real quick. Because it's important. Because, like, what we're looking at is ancient texts, whether it's Bible or whether it's the Bhagavad Gita or whether it's the Quran or whatever book we're going from, like, or ancient Native American texts. Like, ancient cultures knew about these things. Real quick, an ancient biblical text, like it talks about in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 2, a people great and tall, the children of the Anakim, who thou knowest and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the children of Anak? And I asked on a show that I watched, Vincent probably, I don't know if Vincent remembers this or not, but he used to be a moderator for Jack Carey. And I asked Jack Carey at that time during that show, and I kind of put some stuff together, but Anakim, Anak, Annunaki. And I put that together, and it's like different cultures called stuff different things. Was the Anak, sons of Anak, or the Anunnaki were also talked about as the gods, or the star people, or different things or whatever. Sons of Anak, they were giants, and the Anunnaki were also supposed to be giants. Is that one and the same thing? What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, a lot, because I've taken a really deep dive into that at one point. So we've talked about in the past. We've talked about the Sumerian tablets, and when the tablets were decoded, well, the 10 or 12% of them that have been allowed to be examined, and then let that some of it be released. That always comes back to me to Zecharia Sitchin, the great archaeologist and biblical scholar that wrote the 12th Planet and some of these other, and really fleshed out the Anunnaki story and tales, and the tales of Nibiru and mining for gold and genetic experimentation, all those things that are in there. However, I'll repeat this. If you look at the context and you look at the storyline, especially in the earlier, the first writings of Sitchin, we're talking about the Genesis story. And we're talking about the Genesis story maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years before there was such thing as a Jew and the Bible was ever put to paper. So maybe you change some of the names of these things, but the storyline itself, 300 off-world Anunnakis coming down and having sex with a human creation. I mean, it's literally the Genesis story. It's identical, You don't ever hear that talked about, really, like, archaeologists know these things, scholars know these things, but it's not part of the common mainstream knowledge, like the fact that the Bible, especially the Old Testament, was taken from far, far older sources, man, and that's the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think about it. I think that it opens that up to if it was important enough for those that created the Old Testament, the stories of the Old Testament, they're just passing down, again, oral stories and stories that are so much older than their own history, that there has to be something to it, And maybe it's not talked about because it kind of maybe mitigates the Old Testament and the Bible a little bit, or takes some of the profoundness away from those people that need that to feel profound. I'm not sure, but I always have said that I always thought that Sitchin and Hancock and some of these guys were really swinging in the right direction. I mean, they were definitely, Eric von Daniker, I mean, they were on to something really big. Again, when any of them, no matter how much work you've done, nobody can come right out and say, and this is what it is. I mean, that's how disciples are born. And zealots, and I don't need that in my life. I need the information. I want perspective. I want others' perspectives. It definitely may not jive with my own, but there's truth in all of it. That's what I think.
One thing I wanted to bring up real quick and pass this, like biblical accounts, like just as a Christian, and any of those of you who are not Christian, who have researched all these other books and stuff like that, if y'all want to ever at any point get on the show and address some of these other books, that's great. Y'all are welcome to come on and discuss these things. One thing I wanted to bring up real quick, just in Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, it goes in great detail when Moses sent out some of his people to spy out the land that God had given to them. He goes on to say, the people, I guess the land that he had told them, and they told him, and behold, we came unto the land whither thou sent us, and surely it floweth milk and honey, the fruit of the land. Nevertheless, either way, they said, be strong that dwell, the people that be in this land are strong, that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. It's almost like they're saying we saw the Anunnaki there, or we saw the Anunnaki there. So the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites, the Jebusites, all the ites. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go and possess it and take it. We are well able to overcome it. But the men that went up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had researched, and the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search is the land that eats up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people we saw in it are men of great stature. In other words, they saying the land through which we have gone to search is the land that eateth up the inhabitants. It's saying that the people there are eating other people. They eat the inhabitants of that land. They are cannibals. They eating everything. And what have you heard? Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the breath of an Englishman, the blood of an Englishman. Jolly Green Giant, Jack and the Beanstalk, BFG. These giants were eating people. These fairy tales and stuff like that y'all see on these movies and stuff, they telling you giants was eating people. Oh, so they're saying it's the land that eateth inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. So these are the report that the people came back and told Moses, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, the sons of the Annunaki, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, as so we were in their sight. So in our own sight, like me and you, Chris, right now, like in my sight and your sight, we're the size of grasshoppers, and also them looking down on us, we're the size of grasshoppers in comparison to them, which says that if that's literal, if that's not being dramatic, if that's literal, if we the size of a grasshopper in comparison to them, what is that like? They 40, 50 feet tall?
So
40, 50 feet tall.
Let's go non-canonical and recent to support everything you just said. So okay. There is another rather large name, a researcher from South Africa named Michael Tellinger, right? Now, Michael Tellinger is I guess, for lack of a better term, he had a theory. He was like, why, if Africa was the cradle of civilization, are there no structures here like there are in Egypt and South America? So he started looking for ancient architecture type places in South Africa. And that was his shtick. He did this for a long time. He found a lot of really interesting, really ancient places that had some incredible things. But what he, to me, is primarily known for, and I know he's right, is he's the one who discovered the mud fossil phenomenon, right? And the mud fossils, if you've never seen this stuff, I would suggest you look up Michael Tellinger and look at some of his YouTube documentaries. He's got a couple really long symposiums, couple like 2.5, 3 hour ones, where he goes into a huge PowerPoint presentation about the history and play-by-play of what he found. And so Tellinger finds these fossils of human-like body parts, right? I mean, we're talking about hearts the size of a freaking boulder, but literally the most interesting facet, one of the most interesting facets of these things is they're in pieces, as in they were butchered. And I don't mean butchered like in like a battle with like, you find like an arrow protruding out of this giant skeletal eye. I mean like carved up to be eaten. So, and there's enough evidence. It just, if you look at this stuff and you really see it, and you see it for what it is, you lift the veil and you just open your mind and you look at what he's showing you. He's right. He's 100% right. The mud fossil phenomenon is absolutely legitimate in my eyes, and 100% right. And so you look at, it talks about cannibalism amongst the giant race. That was, if I'm not mistaken, the primary motivation for the native tribe burning out the giants in the Lovelock Cave is because they were cannibalistic and they were abducting members of their tribe to eat them. That matches up. It's on another completely opposite part of the world.
And I pulled some sources on that tonight too.
That connected some dots for me. Is what that did. Tellinger's work is really important, especially from a kind of I guess a anthropology standpoint. It kind of once again debunks the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on us, which is the theory of evolution. It's just not true. It isn't. I actually have a future stepdaughter that graduated from college with a degree in anthropology. She absolutely flat out refuses to discuss this topic with me.
Some stuff people just not prepared for it. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now in the comments.
If I went to college for that and I was told everything I've been taught was a lie, I wouldn't want to do it either. You know what I mean?
Everything.
How do you support it? Well, you're just not looking.
I don't believe nothing. I'm the biggest conspiracy theorist out there. Those of you who are out there in the comments right now while me and Chris talking, I'm just gonna ask you a question real quick, and y'all can ponder this in your own mind. And I'm gonna read something to y'all real quick, and then in a few minutes I'm gonna specifically bring up the giants of Lovelock Cave. He just brought that up, and then we will briefly talk about the giants of Kandahar.
B, I'm gonna take 2 minutes real quick.
Okay, go ahead, and I'm gonna talk
2 minutes.
to them.
Yeah.
You can.
I'm still dressed in my gym clothes.
Chris, if you want, you can cut your camera or whatever while you waiting. You want?
I was just gonna moon everybody.
Okay. All right, now, y'all, while Chris is gone, real quick, I'm out there for y'all real quick, and while he gone, I'm gonna discuss a few things with y'all real quick, and y'all make sure when y'all got questions or any comments you want me to readily notice right off the top, put them in all caps. But I'm gonna ask y'all right now, because like any of y'all, some of y'all are not Christian, but for the ones who are, the Bible does specifically say that, and I guess in the last days, these giants are going to be resurrected and come back again or whatever to, I guess, enact God's wrath on humanity. So, but what I want to know, like, we're not talking about basketball players 6-7 feet tall. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, according, and y'all who not familiar with Steve Quayle or L.A. Marzulli or Tom Horn or Tim Alberino, if y'all know, specific, go to Steve Quayle, Genesis6Giants.com, SteveQuayle.com. Go to that, look up Genesis 6 Giants. Some of the tallest giant skeletons that have ever been found have been like 32 feet tall. We got newspaper articles going all the way back to like the 1800s of giant skeletons found all across the United States. Archaeological digs. These things once brought up, then it gets skirted off to wherever it goes to, Smithsonian, wherever it goes to. There's actually, you Google stuff they don't want you to know, or there's forbidden archaeology. If you look that up, look that stuff up, you will find that there's things that they don't want you to know because it goes against their theory of evolution. It goes against all these different things that they don't want you to know about. Real quick, regardless of whether you believe the Bible or not. And Tamara, I left your comment on the screen because I want to bring that up at some point when Chris comes back. But regardless of whether you believe in the Bible or not, one thing that you have to admit, regardless of the Bible, the ancient cultures throughout the entire world, whether it be ancient Egyptian, Greek, Native American, Hebrew, or whatever, all these different cultures have talked about these giants. Lovelock Cave, giants, giant of Kandahar, that's the Middle East, or what do you want to say, Afghanistan or Iraq or any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to say this real quick. The King Og, all that kind of stuff. When we're talking about King Og of Bashan or all that kind of stuff, the Bible, everything that those of you who are Christian, everything that we get out of the Bible, whatever, all this was happening over there in what we call today the Middle East, Egypt, Afghanistan. It was called ancient Sumer and Samaria and all that. It was called all that kind of stuff back then. It wasn't called, Afghanistan and Iraq. It wasn't called that back then. It was called Sumer. It was called, it was called that stuff back then. That's what it was in the Bible at that point in time. But I want to bring up something real quick. It was more than just David and Goliath in the Bible. King Og, and I'm going to bring this up real quick. This is Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 3-7. The battle between the forces of Og and Moses is described in greater detail in the book of Deuteronomy. There we read that Og was king over 60 fortified cities, all of which the Israelites captured. He was also a very large man. His bed was made of iron and was of enormous size, 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. That's 13 and a half feet long and 6 feet wide. This inclusion of this detail emphasizes the size of Og. A man needing this size of bed was likely very tall, 10 or 11 feet. So your tallest giants day, or what you want to call like your tallest basketball player, did you hear that? A man needing a bed 13 and a half feet long and 6 feet wide. A man needing this size of bed was likely very tall, 10 or 11 feet. This interpretation is supported by the fact that Og was one of the last of the Rephites. Rephites. That's Deuteronomy 3:11, which means he was strong and tall. So I'm just telling you, they had different sects of different giants. You had the Nephilim, you had the zamzummim, Anakim, rephaim, and the zamzummim. It was different tribes of giants back then. So
somebody once told me.
Go ahead.
Oh no! When you brought up the rephaim, so as I've in some of my travels, especially in Arizona and parts of Utah, when I was really engaged in a lot of photography, I don't do that anymore, but I did, for a long time. And I would see these beings within the rocks, these entities. And I mean, this wasn't pareidolia. These were eyeballs and faces and body structures, but they were all literally seemed to have rock at their core, or they were some sort of biological. I used to call them dimensionals. I didn't know what to call them, but somebody told me that they were the rephaim and that they were also of Nephilim descent. This is in North America, and I don't know that that's true, but I did do a little bit of research into it, and there was for sure some different physical characteristic differences between some of the Nephilim tribes themselves. I hear that, and I go back to let's go down another road. Let's go down the Sitchin Anunnaki stories and the different hybridization as they were trying to create the perfect slave labor force for themselves. This is all again Sitchin theory, and some of the things that they were trying as they were blending their DNA initially with a native supposed hominid on our planet to try and create the other beings who would be able to do their manual labor for them that the Anunnaki that they brought with them were now tired of doing. So that backs up that theory of you talk about the Rephaim, the Nephilim, and that whatever I can't even pronounce them anymore. But I did look into the Rephaim theory, and it kind of holds a little bit of water. That is we call them rock giants, for lack of a better term. But again, another theory is that they are another style of Nephilim. They certainly seem to have many of the same abilities that some of the other entities have as well. Just a side note.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up, I wanted to bring up and ask you a question, Tamara Bear, because I left it on the screen for the longest time. We got to talking, but Tamara said, isn't there supposed to be Nephilim under the Tigris and Euphrates River and supposed to be let out when the river dries up? Have you heard of this, Chris? If you want to speak, can you expound on that?
If I'm not mistaken, that's in Enoch. When the I don't know if they're Nephilim, but they're the fallen watchers. That was part of their punishment, was to be chained up underneath the earth. And if I'm not mistaken, and I might be because I haven't reviewed this in a minute, but I think that the Tigris and Euphrates, that valley was discussed as one of the places where they were chained and punished. You know, so yeah, I've heard that story. Heard that. I think there's also prophecy
And I don't.
behind it as well.
Chris, are you aware that there's a video that came out, and I can't remember the channel. It was Night God 333 or whatever. He just shared it on his channel not too long ago, and I believe that Tony Merkel also shared on his channel under the Euphrates River audio recordings under the Euphrates River of I think that he titled the video was like, "Is this the fallen angels coming back?" But you heard these it sounded like terrible, like demonic growlings and voices or whatever recorded underneath the Euphrates River. It was really it was just disturbing to listen, like, oh shit, like this is terrifying, like it made you terrified for your soul. It was really scary. And I saw Tamara's comment earlier, and she said that she believes it's almost dried up, and I think Al Sanarico was agreeing with her and saying it was. So there's been several different times that's actually come up. But did you want to we're going to get ready, and I'm going to bring Chris back again. We're going to discuss a couple of more things, but I do want to Al trying to be funny. He said giants have to eat too. I'm just telling y'all right now, like when it comes down to it, it's not normal. Like right now, and I asked Chris was gone, like how would y'all feel like right now in our time period, like the tallest person that ever lived in our time has been 8'11". That was Robert Wadlow. Y'all look that up when you get a chance. Now that was what Chris was saying earlier when he was talking about the pituitary. Well, it wasn't pituitary, it was thyroid gland type of deformity that causes that form of gigantism. But this is not what we're talking about. The Bible talks about the giants having 6 fingers and 6 toes. So would you say, Chris, that based on today, because I got so many different areas. Like when I get into this, I get into it. We ain't even discussed Gilgamesh. We ain't discussed the Goliath yet, because a lot of people don't realize that Goliath was not the tallest, and Goliath was not the only giant. David and Goliath, that was just him.
The Philistines were a Nephilim tribe, you know?
The what now? Can you repeat that?
I said the Philistine tribe. I mean, that, you know, they inhabited the promised land. They inhabited, you know, that's what the Jews were after, you know, to get them out of there. You know, it's a great, you know, so a lot of these stories are riddled with giant tales, you know. I see some interesting comments in here, and, you know, I always get nervous when people say, these people are this and this is that. I don't know any of that to be true, and I don't think anybody else does either. You know, I'm open to every possible scenario that can shed light on this. You know, but you know, I one of the things that I love about, say, David Paulides, is the fact that you will never hear Dave say anything with an absolute other than the facts of behind things. You know, you'll never hear Dave say, for example, what he believes the entities are behind the missing 411. I try very, very carefully not to inject my ideas as fact, because again, even the people that I respect the most, the researchers that I respect the most, present it as this is what we found, not, and as a result of that, this is what it is. You know, ancient history
Absolutely.
is subjective. Somebody mentioned that the Phoenicians were descendants of the Atlanteans. I've heard that. I don't know that to be true. I mean, you can probably connect some dots, and you could probably make a pretty strong, convincing argument for that. But again, it's an unknown. No one knows. There's not enough evidence to 100% support that or any of these things. There's nothing. At the end of the day, we're spitballing ideas and trying to come up with something that makes sense again to us, you know.
Absolutely. One thing I wanted to bring up too, and y'all, I've got so much, like when it comes to me and Chris, y'all, like we can go for hours because we ain't even. Next time, I tell y'all what's gonna happen next time. Like I'm going to officially just do an interview. See, whenever me and Chris get on the phone, like it's like when we get on the show, like it's a whole conversation. I'm gonna have to do. We're gonna pick Chris's brain straight up, and I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna try my best to be quiet. Chris is like, I'm telling y'all, Chris is the guru right now. I'm telling y'all, I can't just like when I talk
There
to
are
Chris,
people
like
in this
Chris
chat.
picks my brain.
There
ahead,
are
Chris.
people in this chat. There are some people in this chat that have taken some pretty deep dives. You know, and I can see it just from the comments. I'll shout out to Damien Cott, who I see in there, who's part of my home group, and he's a great researcher. If you're into photography, there's very few better than Damien, and that's for sure. You know, I've so lucky, Bettina. You know, I've made connections just even through you and through this with people, most of the people in the chat, because I don't get on podcasts with literally anybody else. I don't want to. You know, the less of me in all this and my inflated freaking ego, the better. You know, it has always been a hindrance to me to learning, and I try and keep that tamped down a little bit. You know, for sure. I'm no guru. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, and I've learned a few things on the chat that I've never heard of some of these people. I've never heard of Christine Murphy, Frenshot Pearson. I'll check them out, man. You know, I don't. Personally, I don't watch a lot of other podcasts.
No, Christine. I met
Christine.
her at the conference, and she's great. Christine, actually, I think Christine lives in Tennessee. She doesn't live too far from me. Y'all, I'll tell y'all what. Y'all in the comments, leave a comment below, because we ain't even finished with this. Every time me and Chris get to talking, I'm telling you, Chris is real deep. Let me know in the comments. Y'all want Chris back? I'm gonna have Chris back. Chris gonna be back for so many shows. Chris is not only a co-host, he's a friend, and he's also like a guru. I don't care what Chris say. He can say he's not a guru. He's a guru. Chris is a walking encyclopedia.
On a personal note, the wedding invitations went out today, so keep your eyes peeled on the mail.
Yes, I'm gonna be at that wedding. What's the date on that, Chris?
May 6th.
Chris getting married May 6th.
You're gonna love the theme. That's all I'm gonna tell you.
I'll be at Chris's wedding in May, y'all. It's gonna be beautiful. So it's 9:38. Chris, are you still good for a second?
Yeah, man.
Y'all, real quick, it's a place to like. I want to go in depth on every single aspect of what we're discussing right now, and there's so many different areas of this. And I'm gonna pull more sources, but Love Like Cave did pull some stuff on that. Y'all, Chris will be back again. Chris, they saying congratulations. Letitia Nunley, let me just speak to you real quick because I didn't get to say hi to you earlier. So I'm telling you hello now. Thank you for showing up tonight. Michael McKenzie, Aussie Sue, Jonestead Farm. Y'all are new to the chat. Thank y'all for showing up. Penny, thank you for showing up tonight. I really appreciate y'all. Blondes and Booze, I really appreciate you, Krista, for showing up tonight. That's awesome, and I really thank you. Hi, thank you for showing up. Steve Wolf, I think you might be Steven Stevenson on. I'm not sure, but if that's you, because I told you earlier tonight, show up over there when I go live. Sugar Britches, thank you tonight. Eric Hollister, thank you for showing up tonight. I'm just trying to make sure I shout out everybody out. Christine, thank you again.
Purple Hobbit. He's always here.
Yep, Eric.
And thank you, Marquetta.
Yep. Here, let me see. Marquetta, as always. And real quick, because Chris, like I said before, y'all, like whenever I do a show with Chris, we talk about so much stuff. and I'll pull like so many different sources because like when we talk about this stuff, there's so many different areas, and we haven't even addressed and going into this could be 4 or 5 different shows in and of itself just on the Nephilim and the giants. We didn't get into the giant in Kandahar. I'm gonna bring up Lovelock Cave. He brought it up earlier tonight, but I'll bring it up and we'll discuss that more in depth on another show, the Lovelock Cave situation. I'll bring it up later. But Kandahar giant, Chris, from what you know of the Kandahar giant, I can't remember. I think that was like 1,100, 1,200 pounds. I can't remember how tall they said the thing was. Are you familiar with that story?
I don't think at this point, if you've been paying attention to this topic, especially giantism and the Nephilim, that you can't be somewhat familiar with it. You know, I hesitate to go into absolute specifics, but the gist of it is is that during the Afghanistan conflict, a unit of soldiers, of U.S. soldiers, came across this being supposedly a giant humanoid with all the characteristics of a classic depiction of a Nephilim. You know, I don't remember the height. Could have been as tall as 12, 13 feet tall. Bearing a lance, bearing a lance, which is supposedly bearing a lance, which is supposedly the weapon of choice for the Nephilim back in the day. And he apparently slaughtered a whole team of these things of our soldiers. And they sent another team in, told them to aim really high, and didn't really tell them what they were going up against, and they killed it. It was removed from the battlefield where it was. It was in a cave in the mountains in Kandahar, outside of Kandahar, supposedly. And you know, the stories and the it's always been. Now, I guess apparently L.A. Marzulli's had an eyewitness to the extraction of the body and the moving of it, and it being on a helicopter and then a ship, and had an interview with that. And I don't recall. I don't think I've seen it. But that's the gist of it. It's almost like a military urban legend that has really gathered legs. I think, as we all know, somebody brought up, you know, folklore and legends all have their root in truth. So I would tend to believe that there's something to this story. There's just been a little too much evidence, and a few too many not connected people that are part of the journey of this story. So yeah, it's fascinating, you know, because it's current. We're not looking at something that happened 5,000, 11,000 years ago. We're looking at something that happened 15 years ago, 18 years ago. You know what I mean? And that's with allegedly live witnesses to this, you know, and then with some degree of believableness to them, because, you know, I mean, you know, I tend to trust anybody that's gone through that type of training and been in the military like that, you know, to a certain degree. Not the upper echelons. I don't believe them at all. Once you hit Pentagon level, I just assume you're all lying.
And it was terrifying in and of itself. You know, a lot of people, there was, when y'all check out L.A. Marzulli when y'all get a chance, because L.A. Marzulli brought that up. And when L.A. Marzulli brought it up on his show, he had like a couple of the supposed soldiers who were there or that witnessed that whole situation with the giant go down, talking about how that giant actually take that one of those soldiers to like a spear, like a giant ancient spear, and had him on there.
That's like what they killed him with spears or a lance. Yeah, that's the story. I think B's right. Like, if you know, anybody that's really interested in, especially the Nephilim in particular, there really isn't a more, for lack of a better term, authority or someone that's done more boots on the ground digging into this topic than L.A. Marzulli. There just isn't. And on other topics as well. L.A. is fantastic. This is his wheelhouse for sure. You know, a lot of the things that I've learned from L.A. You know, he's somebody, I don't pay attention to a lot of people, a handful, but he's definitely somebody that I do pay attention to him. Obviously, David Paulides, who I had the opportunity to meet a few times, and I sat on an airplane with him one time. That was fantastic. And you know, I still think that my friend Kevin has this great term. He says, "Don't let your paradigm dictate your experience. Let your experience dictate your paradigm." And that means learn for yourself, really, and then draw your own conclusions from your own experience. And that's what I really have concentrated on doing. And that's why I don't like a lot of outside influence, except for when I'm seeking, something specific. Then I'll start digging. But when it comes down to just, I can only listen to so many encounter stories, man. That gets old for me, and pictures, photos do, after a while. I've told you before, in my own personal interaction, when we put the camera down, it just ramped up to a completely different level. The bottom line is they just don't like it, and I guess I would feel the same way if somebody was coming into my living room trying to take pictures of me on the toilet or something. Who knows, but I mean, it's the same concept to me. And when we stop doing that, and trust me, I could go out now and I could have a picture of an entity in 5 minutes, really. I mean, I had a gift for it. I always did. And I stopped doing it. That was a hard choice to make, man, because I mean, it's fun, it's part of the gig, but at the end of the day, why am I taking pictures? To show other people that it's real? Either or you don't at this point. And it doesn't, I just don't get that excited about it anymore. I get excited when they, start talking to me in my head or other things that happen, that I've had happen. That's and that stuff wasn't going on until I stopped taking pictures. Our whole group, none of us do.
The way I look at it is, and I want to say real quick, Eric, also known as Purple Rabbit Abroad, and Sugar Bridges, they both said Duke Sullivan. I think Duke Sullivan was a World Bigfoot Radio, I believe. And I think I do remember him on the episode. I think he might have been on Sasquatch Chronicles with Wes Germer, and I think that episode was called Mountain Giants, and I do remember him talking about that on there. I would love to talk to him. I might try to reach out to him at some point. I think I have a friend in the cryptid community who has actually interviewed him before. I'm gonna try or is in communication with him. I would love to talk to him about that. I would really love it, because I can't remember if he was just telling stories about it or if he's actually in them himself. If y'all know that, y'all can let me know. This episode that we're having right now, like we're almost like at 2 hours, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down. But when we pick back up, I do want to, we will bring up, I want to go more in depth on the Lovelock Cave Giants, the Kandahar Giant, and other things. I'm going to also bring up all my sources for the giant skeletons that have been found here in the Americas and abroad, and other structures that they built and all that kind of stuff, because I kind of came up with this show on the fly tonight. Yes, yes. Please do, like, immediately, because I think Brown Dwarf, I think at one point in time, I was in a live chat, and I think he was over there, and we were talking. I was talking about giants in that chat, and I believe he actually said that was me who talked about the giants, and I don't know how to get in touch with him. I don't know if he's on Facebook or whatever, but if you know how to put us in contact, then I don't know how to get you to reach out to me. I guess Brown Dwarf, send me a friend request on Facebook, Bettina Moss, or message me on Facebook, or do that and just message me, and then that way I can reach out to him, or I may just reach out. I need to talk to him. I do want to have him on the show, most definitely. I've got some great shows coming up from y'all. Scott Carpenter's going to be on the show. I'm going to reach out to Sasquatch Ontario, Mike Patterson. There's several different other people. If y'all are familiar with Stephen Michael from Paranormal Investigations, he will be on the show. I've got several different guests that's going to be on the show with me. So y'all just hang tight. I know I've kind of fallen off for a while, and I just had to take a break. This kind of, feel what we do kind of can be stressful. A lot of times you got to just step back and recharge your batteries. But Chris will be back on multiple shows. We're not finished with this. We got more shows to do. We got to finish discussing Love Like Cave, Kandahar Giants, and we still got to finish our episode and the Nephilim because we're not finished with that as far as cryptid's concerned. We got several different things to bring up. So, yeah, we'll see him back. Yes, Brown Dwarf, Mike Patterson, Sasquatch, Ontario. And Chris has got some
Mike
other
Patterson
people.
Mike Patterson's legit. Great researcher, great experiencer, really public. He's fantastic, though. I would definitely love to see him on to talk.
Chris, are you familiar with the guy from British Columbia who?
I actually, it's so funny. I just watched this debunking video randomly this morning. Believe it or not, about the guy in BC that, you know, he had a TikTok channel and he supposedly was driving up in I guess it's Whisper or Whistle, wherever the hell it is, way up in British Columbia, and he supposedly photographed a giant on a ridge, and then all these other strange occurrences were happening in his life, and then he died, and he was like 35, 36 years old, and then when this guy kind of went into debunking it, I mean, I listened to the whole story, and, you know, like, I've been known to jump down a few rabbit holes, you know, and then the debunking actually made sense. It wasn't like a thinker thunker where you go into it just assuming that he's just going to criticize everything and not believe anything. I don't, you know, pay attention to that guy. He brings too much negativity to a lot of things. But this other guy, I don't believe it to be true after I'd seen the backstory, enough of it. There was enough. There's a video on it right now on WF on YouTube. That's the name of the channel. And it was interesting because he did a really in-depth look at the whole thing, and on face value, it was had that, you know, Men in Black government conspiracy, you know, guy was, you know, being absolutely railroaded and harassed by the Canadian version of the CIA and whatever, and then at the end of it, I'm thinking, oh, okay, the dude's full of shit, you know. So I don't know. I kind of tend to believe that wasn't a true story.
From some information I gathered, I heard earlier, it's saying they felt like it wasn't a true story either.
There's enough of that out there. We all know it.
All right, y'all. So I'm getting sleepy. I'm going to shut this down. I got to go to work early in the morning. So we're going to get back on here. Me and Chris have got several different things, and I made all kind of notes. So we're going to get back on here with y'all. Love you guys. Thank y'all for supporting the show tonight. Good night. Thank you, Sugar Britches, Letitia. Thank you, Christine Murphy. Appreciate you, Al Santoriga, Steve Wolf, Marquetta, everybody who showed up tonight. I really appreciate each and every one of y'all. This is on the fly. I usually, like I said, I like to prepare for my shows in advance every time I go live, but sometimes they're not prepared. Alan, thank you for showing up. Aussie Sue, Sly Dog, Tamara, thank you for showing up. I don't want to make anybody. And everybody, I've been called off with so many of y'all. Thank y'all for showing up. In the next few days to the next week or so, I'll have another show, other shows coming up, and try to get back on a regular basis. I just had to take a break. But thank y'all for showing up and supporting the show. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And make sure you leave a comment, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. That being said, y'all have a good night. Thank you tonight, Chris, for coming on the show. And
good night, everybody. Thank you for showing up, man.
All right, good night.
See you, I'll call you later.
All right, bye.
Good night, all.